Hi, I'm Philip Brunton, and welcome to Jazz Play lesson number 9. Now, in this lesson, I'll be addressing the diatonic seventh chords found when we use a minor scale. Now, there's lots of information in this lesson to cover, so please bear with me. I'll try to get through as quick as possible and as clear as possible. Okay, now first make sure you've downloaded your PDF worksheet for lesson number 9, found at MyMusicPB.com/jazzplate. Now, looking at your worksheet on page 1, you'll find the first chord is a G7 chord, and we've learned that chord already, and we know it's a Mixolydian scale that goes with it. And as you can see there, with the avoidance note being the 4th note, and that shows with an X. Okay, if you want to play the 4th note, you can use this as a quick note, but just in context of heard with the chord, it's an avoidance note. Now, if you want to sound the 4th in context with the chord, then we would have a G7 sus4 chord, and that replaces the 3rd with the 4th note. And as you see now, you'll have the same scale, Mixolydian scale, but the avoidance note is the 3rd. Now, the next part I want to talk today, especially with dominant 7th chords, is that we have tensions. They're upper structured part of the chord. We have the 1, 3, 5, 7, and then we can add the 9th, the 11th and 13th beyond that as a sounding note with the chord. You'll notice the 9th is the 2nd note, 11th is the 4th, and the 13th is the 6th note. It doesn't matter what octave it is, but we name it with the 9th, 11th, and 13th. Okay, and I remind you again, in this Mixolydian scale, the 11th would be an avoidance note. But if we want another way to hear that avoidance note to work, we can alter some of these tensions. And you see the 4th chord there is a G7 sharp 11. So this is now using the tension 11, and we're altering that tension to be sharp 11, which works really well heard in context of the chord because it no longer conflicts that semitone against the major 3rd sound. So we have a scale where all notes can be heard in context of the chord. So this is not a regular Mixolydian. You could say it's a Mixolydian sharp 11, or also known as a Lydian flat 7, because you remember the Lydian scale has the sharp 11th, so it's a Lydian flat 7. And you'll find you can also create this from the melodic minor from the 4th degree. And now the ultimate use of altered tensions would be the altered chord. And here's an example, G7 alt. And in this case, we have a flat 9, a sharp 9, a flat 5, which is also a sharp 11, and a sharp 5, which is also a flat 13th. Of course, we have the important root, 3rd, and 7th in that chord. And there's your scale, and it's called an altered scale. I'll just give you an example on my key here. It's quite a nice sound against the chord. I'll play it. I'll need a flat 5th in there. So it offers far more color to our dominant 7th chord. And finally, there's something called a tritone substitution I want to introduce here, when you can take a dominant 7th chord and substitute with another dominant 7th, which is a tritone away, 3 whole tones. What's unique about these two dominant 7s, so they'll share the same 3rd and 7th, but just in reverse. So the 7th becomes the 3rd of the new chord, and the 3rd becomes the 7th. And you'll see that's the D flat 7 is the scale, the chord that's showing there, and the scale is actually the same, but when you start from the D flat, it's called a Lydian flat 7. There's that Lydian flat 7 coming up again. But if you look how you see where's the 3rd and 7th, and you'll also discover they're actually all the same notes, maybe unharmonically spelling different. So a Lydian flat 7 on a tritone substitute is the same notes sound as you'll get from the original dominant using the amazing altered scale. So where can you use some of these examples of the tritone substitution? You'll find that the example there, the traditional 2-5-1 I have, D minor, G7, C major. It can be, you can substitute the G7 for the D flat 7 there. And at the final example at the bottom of the page, you'll find you can even substitute the 2 chord. That's the new 2 chord leading to the new tritone subchord, and then back to the 1. So you find these examples all the time in your music, so it's quicker to analyze the tune and work out what scales you need. And while we're on topic of substituting chords, I just wanted to show you at the page 2, the top of page 2, we learned about the functions of each chord of the diatonic sevens. We had the tonic function chords, the subdominant, and the dominant function chords last lesson in lesson 8. You can substitute, like function substitution is called. So in the example of traditional 2-5-1 at the top of the second page, I've now substituted the D minor, the 2 chord, with another subdominant chord, the 4 chord, and I've substituted the 1 chord, the C major, with another tonic function chord, and that would be the A minor, the 6th chord. So you'll find that showing up again. It's all about reading your chords, analyzing your chords in your tune, and finding out what scales you need. And when you can realize where they come from, it helps you on that journey. Okay, now much of the work we're going to be doing is based on the minor scales today. So I want to get right into playing some of these minor scales. You remember we had our clock to work out our key signatures for majors, and we introduced that in lesson 7. There it is on page 2. And we have a 2-octave range shown you underneath that. That's for working through our scales. You're welcome to write it out for your full range instrument. I've just shown you 2 octaves, so we can use every instrument playing right now. Okay, so let's just have a reminder how we use that in a major scale. We can see that the first example I give is C major, and we know at the top of the clock at 12 o'clock, it shows C major, no sharps, no flats, and you would play it like this. Okay, now you can see within the inner circle is our minor keys, and you can see C major is the same as A minor. So I'm going to play with the same key signature, A minor, and you'll see that on the next example. I'll start on the A, work my way up to the top note, down to the bottom of that range, and then back to the A. Okay, let's get another example. Let's look at G minor. And you'll notice these are called natural minor scales right now we're addressing. So there's no alterations. We're going to talk about the harmonic and melodic very soon in this lesson. But with these natural minors, we'll look at G minor, and we'll find G minor in our inner circle at 10 o'clock. And if we see that's the same key signature as B flat major, which is 2 flats. So start on G, work my way up to the top, down, and back up to the G. Okay, let's just do one more. C minor. Okay, we find C minor, that's the same as E flat major. You'll find that at 9 o'clock. And so that's 3 flats, B, E, and A flat. And I'll just go through that from the bottom to the top. Now when we played A minor, we could say that's relative to C major. And when we played C minor, we'd say that's parallel to C major, having the same starting note. And knowing our parallel scales is really good for what's called modal interchange we're going to be learning about. Now I'm sure you're eager to start practicing all your minors in every key, but just before you do that, let's just address the next section, harmonic and melodic. And maybe I can save you a bit of time in your practice. Now at the top of page 3, you can see the diatonic sevens in the major key, in this case C major. And we are introduced to this in the previous lessons. Now under this, I've shown with a parallel minor all the diatonic sevens. And you'll see the differences, whereas the 1 chord was a major 7th, now the 1 chord is a minor 7th. The D minor of the 2 chord is now a D half diminished chord, also known as a minor 7 flat 5. You see the half diminished is a little circle with a line going through it, half diminished. Then look at that 3rd chord, because that lower 3rd now, it's a flat 3 chord, major 7th, in a minor key, which is different than the 3 minor in a major key. So you can see all the differences. One thing you will notice is the 5 chord is a bit useless because we need the 5 chord in harmony to be major, and the 5 chord on a natural minor diatonic 7th is a minor, so it's not useful for us right now, but you can see it would be a G minor 7. What is useful also is that they're all the same as the major because they're parallel. Now what's interesting to note about the two is that they are related, the major and minor, in that the 1 chord of a minor is the same as the 6th chord of the major. And you can see how that's a minor 7, and then the 2 chord of the minor is the same as the 7 chord of the major, the half diminished minor 7 flat 5. The 3 chord is the same again as the 1 chord of the major, etc. So those arrows will show you how they're linked. So if you really know your major scales and chords in every key, you basically know your natural minor diatonic sevens at the same time. So what we need to now is have a look at the harmonic minor and see how that changes the whole situation. So the harmonic minor scales, we raise the 7th note. The purpose of that 7th note becomes the major 3rd of a 5 chord, and that's the harmonic minor. Okay, so here's C harmonic minor. I'll show you play through. Now the changes this makes to our diatonic 7 chords for the minor, first of all, our 1 chord will be a minor major 7. So it's a minor triad with a major 7th on there. And then the 2 is pretty well the same. The 3 is a flattened 3rd, augmented major 7th. There's a chord for you. So that 5th has been raised. It's not a perfect 5th now, it's been raised, augmented. The 4th is pretty well the same as before. The 5th is now we got our dominant 7th, traditional dominant 7th. That's what we needed the harmonic minor for. And also the 7th. The 7th is introduced as a full diminished chord. Diminished 7th. And now the 7th has introduced us to the full diminished 7th chord. So what other changes do we see when we add a melodic minor diatonic 7s? So here's the melodic minor. It's worth noting that a jazz melodic minor is a little different than a classical harmony melodic minor. A jazz melodic minor will raise the 6th and 7th up and down, whereas a classical only up, descending, it will return back to the natural minor. So we use a jazz melodic minor. And we build diatonic 7s. The different chords we get on the 2 chord, we have a 2 minor 7 that we used to have with the major. The 4, we get a 4-7. We got like a dominant 7 sound on the 4 chord now. Because the 6th and 7th are raised, both the 6th and 7th chords will be half diminished chords. So there's lots of different chords we create from these minor diatonic 7s. And when we see it in parallel with the major 7s, what composers will do is what's called modal interchange. You can take a 1 chord in a major key and you can substitute it with a 1 chord in the minor key. And this creates much more color for the composer to work with. And as a player, we just kind of have to look at it and figure out where's it coming from, why is it there, and what scale do we want to draw on it for improvisation. So hopefully you're fluent with your major scales by now. If not, please go back and get comfortable with them. Fluency in the majors are very important for your improvisation success. So now we're going to look at building fluency in your harmonic and melodic minor scales. Now we're going to start with the harmonic minors, and you'll see on page 4 at the top, we're going to use our tetrachord system first to get used to these scales. These are the harmonic minor, we raise our 7th. The first 4 notes, the first bar is the minor tetrachord where we have our semitone between the 2nd and 3rd note. And the second bar, which is the next 4 notes, is the harmonic tetrachord where we have a minor 2nd followed by this augmented 2nd, that raised 7th, and then another semitone. So just before we play those, let's have a tuning note, A440. Time. Okay, this is the harmonic minor scales, tetrachords playing together. play through those tetrachords, then I invite you to learn fluently your harmonic minor scales using the range exercise in the clock. I'll just give you an example that's underneath there. We can see the range, in this case a 2 octave, and we're going to start doing a G harmonic minor. I figured out that, as we said before, the G harmonic minor is the same where B flat is, which is 10 o'clock, which is 2 flats, and then I will raise my 7th note. So we have an F sharp in this case, and I start on the G, go all the way to the top, down, and back up G. And if you get to know that in all 12 keys quite fluently, you're set to go. So next we're going to play through the melodic minors using the tetrachord system. Okay, you'll notice the first bar, the first tetrachord 4 notes, is exactly the same as the harmonic minor, so you've already learned half of this. And then this top half, the second tetrachord 4 notes, is same as a major, so we've done those before. Okay, so it's just basically the second note of the second tetrachord that's slightly different than the harmonic. Okay, so let's play these together in all 12 keys. Okay, and just like the harmonic minors, we need to be fluent in all 12 keys, and I advise you use your range system and the clock. And here's an example of the G melodic minor. Those classical players will get used to that new sound of that raised 6 and 7 when you're descending. You'll find that strange at first. So I look at G minor again, I find that at 10 o'clock, which is 2 flats. Same as B flat major, I raise my 6th and 7th note. Okay, now we're ready to introduce another type of chord. It's called the subdominant minor chords. We've done the tonic function, the subdominant function, and the dominant function chords. There's something called a subdominant minor function chords, and there are 6 of them. And they're borrowed from minor keys, especially because they have that flat 6 in a scale. Okay, so the first type, in this case, in the key of C, we'll take the 2 minor 7 flat 5, and you'll find that the scale it uses is a Locrian scale. A Locrian is the major from the 7th degree. Okay, and the next type is a 4 minor, and the 4 minor can also include the minor 6, minor 7th, and the major 7th on that 4 minor chord. And it uses a melodic minor scale, but although you would use a Dorian if you're doing a minor 7, in this case, and the key is C major and F minor 7. And that's shown there. Okay, the third subdominant minor chord is an A flat major 7, which is the flattened 6 major 7 in the key of C minor. And you'll find that uses a Lydian scale. And the Lydian, I remind you, is just like the 4 chord of a major, it's the major from the 4th degree. Now this 4th chord is a flattened 6-7 chord. And you'll find that A flat 7 in the key of C minor. And that uses what's called the Lydian flat 7. That shows up again, that Lydian flat 7. So that's going to be a really useful scale to know that Lydian flat 7. If you want to use that range practice and learn your Lydian flat 7. But you'll notice it's a melodic minor from the 4th degree. So if you really get to know your melodic minors, you'll be covered. The 5th chord there is a B flat 7. That's a flattened 7-7 chord. Okay, and use again Lydian flat 7. And the final one is a D flat major 7 in the key of C minor. That's a flattened 2 major 7. All these contain that flattened 6 note of a minor scale. And you see that one used the Lydian. Now, this is more for writing if you want to be composing some jazz, but it's also used for us, again, for us as players to be able to analyze the chord progression and helps us come up with what chord scale to improvise with. So you can refer back to these whenever you want. And you would make a mention in your analyzing SDM, subdominant minor, if you want to, in your analyzing. Okay, you'll find subdominant minors usually followed by a dominant chord, a function chord. Sometimes you'll have a subdominant minor followed by a dominant. Not always, but that's where you find most of the time. Now it's time to apply all this information, and where we see the most use of all these new chords is in the 2-5 progression. We've done the 2-5-1s in a major. Now we'll look at 2-5-1s when they're either in a minor key or secondary 2-5s leading to a minor chord. And especially on that 5 chord. So I show you here a 5 chord, still on page 5, halfway down. We have a 5-7 chord with a flattened 13th flat 9. That might show up because it's a 5 chord heading towards the C minor 7 chord. And if that's in the key of C minor, or it could be a 6 chord in the key of, that would be in the key of E flat major, that can show up. So if it's any of those, that's why we use that flattened 13th flat 9 in our scale. And you'd listen out for as well to see if the piano player is playing that, but you would, if it would be written down to help you. So in this case, I would use a harmonic minor from the 5th degree for that dominant 7th. And if we have G7 flat 13th, the next example, it doesn't have that flat 9th because most likely it's heading to the Dorian C minor 7, which happens to be the 2 chord of a B flat major scale. Okay, so that 5 chord is heading over to the C minor. A lot of information there. What you'll do, I'll show you when we're analyzing how that comes through. Okay, so that flattened 13th with a normal 9th, A natural, you'll see why, because in the minor target note, it also has the A natural. But again, where are we going to use this? For me, personally, whenever I have 2-5-1s, it would show as a half diminished 2 going to the 5 and then the 1 minor. And you see that in the bottom of the page. And what I tend to do, there's so much involved, my first reaction is to go for a harmonic minor scale. Then if I have time, I want to make some adjustments to that dominant 7th, I would. But the harmonic minor scale will get your flat 5th on that D half diminished chord, and it'll give you that major 3rd that we need on the dominant. So it's a great scale to really get to know that harmonic minor. So if I said, is there one scale you really want to get comfortable with besides the major, get the harmonic minor and then the melodic minor. Now this pattern, is really useful to take on to our next exercise on page 6. So what you're going to do is the 2-5 using the harmonic minor of the target key chord, and then on the target chord you're going to use an Aeolian, which is the basic natural minor scale. So on page 6 we're going to play through these every key, improvising, and what's going to happen is I'm going to play the first line and you repeat the first line. You can copy back my phrase structure. You remember phrase structures where we put our long notes, and that might be a 4 bars or 4-2+2 or 4-1-1-2. At the 4th bar, I've shown to help you out the Aeolian scale, the natural minor there, to help you on the last 2 bars, and also in brackets above the 7th note, the raised pitch. So for the first 2 bars, you can see that harmonic minor. So that's useful to help you in improvising. So we're going to play through this. Good luck on it. Hopefully you'll find you come back to this after really practicing that harmonic minor scale. So this is 2-5-1s in minor. go for you? As you say, you can get used to the scales and you get used to the chords, and it's a combination of both, and you'll find yourself some fluency over those chords. Now, if you're having any trouble with this exercise, I suggest that you go back to page 5, bottom of the page, learn that pattern with this chord progression. And so you can see in each key, and you'll have and then the next one. Okay, it's time to apply this information by improvising through a tune, and the tune today is going to be Autumn Leaves. Now, if we look on page 7 of your PDF, you see Autumn Leaves written for your key. For me, on my E-flat alto saxophone, I'm in the key of G major. Now, looking at line 1, you can now identify a 2-5-1 on the first 3 bars, and that leads us to a 4 chord on the last bar. So that's all related to one key, the initial key. For me, it's G major on an E-flat alto saxophone. Now, in the second line, we have a 2-5 of a minor, and this is what we were working on in our 2-5-1 minors on the exercises earlier. So it's a 2-5 using the harmonic minor, with its target 1 being the 6th chord of the original key. So we use the Aeolian there. Now, line 3 and 4 is a repeat of line 1 and 2. Line 5 is the 2-5 of the minor, and line 6 is the 2-5 of the major. So far, this piece, all we're using is a major scale in the original key and the relative harmonic minor for the 2-5 of the minors. Now, line 7 has a little more involved. We have the 2-5 of the minor, using the harmonic minor, and then on the target note, it becomes a 2-5 of the next bar's 2-5. But instead of a 5, we've got a tritone substitution. So halfway through the 3rd bar, instead of the dominant 7th, we tritone substitution. And what it allows us to do, it gives us, you can see, a chromatic bass line. You can see how that's working through the chords. So it's a 2-5, 2-5, but the 5s are replaced by tritone sub. So you have a couple options here. You can treat it as a 2-5, and I've shown the 5 in brackets there, halfway through each bar. And that's leading to the target of the next bar. Or you can treat it as a tritone sub, and then you have that Lydian flat 7 scale, which you can use, that we've introduced. So if we use the tritone sub as shown there, it resolves beautifully to line 8, and line 8 is again a repeat of your 2-5 in the minor, harmonic minor, to your target note, which is the 6th of the major key, the Aeolian. So as I say, get to know your key's major scale, and also the relative harmonic minor for your improvisation, and each chord how to play. So a great exercise to prepare for this would be to play the pattern when we go up the chord, down the scale. And so in my example here, on my instrument, I would go on line 1, and I'll do line 1 and 2 this way because everything repeats. It would be so when I'm doing the chords up, I'm reading each chord, and the scale down will reflect either the major in the first line or in the first 2 bars of the second line, the harmonic minor when I'm using my scales. Okay, so whether you want to pause first the recording and practice the first 2 lines like that, or you want to get right into improvisation, but I'll give you a demo first so you can hear some of the ideas. I'll go through once, okay? Okay, it's your turn. I'll count you in. You're going to play through 3 times. 2, 3, 4. Well done. Okay, so as we complete our lesson, that was a lot of information in this lesson, but those minor scales will give us lots of chords to work with and beautiful colors in those scales. So the next lesson is the final lesson in this 10-lesson course, where I hope to wrap up all the information you need with the remaining chords and a few exercises to really help you on your journey. Okay, I look forward to seeing you in lesson 10. Bye for now.